So I had a question recently about what kind of guitar to play if you're going to play slide and how to set it up. And I realized, oh yeah, I actually have an opinion about this. And really, I think there's only three things that matter. And it's a pretty short list, so this is actually not going to be a very long video. For the record, I am playing the same guitar I usually play here on the channel. And it's set up with the same strings as usual, which are 12s. And I am in an open tuning. I'm in open D. And I'm using this totally random ceramic slide from the 90s that was branded Dobro, but was probably made by Dunlop. And so nothing really fancy is going on. And the three things that I think matter are basically that you be able to play slide on the guitar you usually play on, that you can play slide on the strings you usually string that guitar with, and that you can leave the action where you usually do for playing fretted guitar to play slide on your guitar. That's really it. And so obviously there's a little more nuance to it than that. So let me explain what I'm talking about. So first, what kind of guitar? You do not actually need a resophonic guitar to play slide. In fact, some of my favorite slide playing was done just on a regular flat top guitar. I like how it sounds. I mean, I love me some resophonic guitar, don't get me wrong. But I also think that slide sounds great just played on a regular guitar. And so you don't need to change guitars. The main reason to have an additional guitar, besides the fact that having more guitars is always better, is that you can leave that guitar in whatever tuning you're learning to play slide in, which for starting out is always probably going to be either open D tuning, which is what I'm in right now, with the E string tuned down a whole step and the high string tuned down a whole step, the B string tuned down a whole step, and the G string tuned down a half step. So that you end up with D, A, D, F sharp, A, D. So that's one of the two main tunings. And then the other one is open G, which is having a D and a G on the bottom two strings. And then these three strings stay the same as they are in standard tuning, D, G, B, and then the high string goes down to D again. So you can retune a regular guitar to one of those two tunings, and it will still work just great for slide. Now, as far as the action and the string gauge, personally, I do not like my acoustic instruments to have super light strings and paper thin action. I want to be able to dig in a little bit, and I don't want things to start getting thin and snappy just because I'm starting to pick a little harder. So for me, the ideal setup is one that already has a little bit of height to the action and a little bit of resistance when you're playing in general. So if you can do that, and you can play with a modest amount of relief in the neck and a string gauge like a set of lights, like basically like a 12 on top, then you're going to have enough resistance when you go to play slide. Because the problem is if you have super light action, or if you started by trying to play slide on electric, then with light strings or very light strings and really thin action, the slide is going to just no matter where you go, you're going to start clanking across the frets, even if you're in the middle of the fingerboard. So whatever you're going to do for slide, if you can split the difference in terms of the action when you're playing non-slide guitar, you'll have an okay setup for playing slide. And the reason that's a good idea is that most slide playing isn't actually just done with the slide. You're not just playing whole chords, especially if you're finger picking and playing a self-accompanied style. There's a whole sort of subgenre that's based a lot more on that idea, sort of the Leo Kottke, John Fahey school. But for the most part, it's a good idea to be able to still play some fretted chords and some single notes and some you just want to be able to play a turnaround every now and then. Right? So you want to be able to mix those with some slide notes. It really opens up the possibilities. If you're trying to play the specific melodies of certain songs, then it may be very convenient to be able to get some of those notes in open position with fretted notes and get other notes up the neck. You can get more contrast and more variety by sometimes playing with fretted notes and sometimes playing with the slide. And you can start to sort of orchestrate and differentiate things by doing that. So overall, it just helps to have a setup that's flexible enough that you can continue to play fretted notes and also get notes with the slide with at least some degree of a clean sound. If it's too light and too flat, it's going to be hard to get the slide to sound good. If it's too stiff and there's too much resistance and too much height to the action, it's going to be really hard to play fretted notes. So to me, the ideal is to kind of split the difference. And so, I don't know literally like exactly like what the action is in like, I don't know, whatever the measurement is for height action. I don't know if it's done in millimeters or inches or what, but I don't know what that is because I'm not a luthier. But you can figure out pretty quickly sort of what is the sweet spot for yourself just by playing a few different instruments, trying them out in open tuning, seeing what happens when you start to move the slide around. The slide is going to sound clanky and weird at the beginning no matter what. And so having a slightly stiffer action and heavier strings will help at the beginning. But then when you want to start adding in fretted notes, it might get to be a little bit tricky. So it's going to take a little experimentation. But those are my recommendations for what kind of guitar to use and how to set it up if you want to start playing more slide guitar. So that's all I have to say about that. If you've got a question or a comment, please leave it down below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're looking for more in-depth lessons on how to strengthen your right hand groove, learn new tunes and arrange them and start to improvise on them, I encourage you to check out my membership, the Fingerstyle 5, which you can learn more about at the link below or the link on screen. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.